Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Fan from Yale. I work on security and cryptography for blockchain systems. This you can view this as sort of a continuation from Phil's motivation for DCNet, and this is actually a sort of a system that constructs a DCNet. The paper is co-authored with other co-authors, and Phil also contributed to a lot of ideas in the early stage of the discussion. So the general motivation for anonymity problem is, as Phil motivated, encryption doesn't really hide everything. It leaks metadata, and metadata is problematic. I will give you another quote, also famous quote about metadata, from an essay former general counsel. So if you, the quote says, if you have enough metadata, you don't really need the content. So there's several general approach to achieve metadata, to prevent the metadata leakage. There's routing, onion routing, Tor, and there's MixNet, and there's also DCNet. And these systems, they achieve like 2 out of the 3 properties that we desire, and this can even be shown more formally that this is indeed the pick 2. That's the best you can do. So DCNet achieves very strong anonymity and low latency in that you don't go through multiple hops, as in MixNet and Tor. But DCNet has this limitation of having high bandwidth consumption. So if we can solve the high bandwidth consumption, that makes DCNet a very appealing solution. So that's what ZipNet, that's why we work on ZipNet. ZipNet is, again, an anonymous broadcast channel. So the basic setting is that there's a group of participants. They want to send a message to the channel. They want to hide who sent the author of the message, even from a network layer adversary. So ZipNet has several key advantages. The first and foremost is what we call, it has a scalable trust. So in these DCNet systems, the modern DCNet systems, it's a client-server architecture. So you will have a group of servers to provide anonymity. And ideally, you will want to rely on any trust assumption, meaning that you need just one out of n servers to be honest, to ensure anonymity. So naturally, the larger the n is, the more likely that you have a honest server. So to decentralize the trust in these servers, you better have like a decentralized participants. Just like you want like solo stakers in Ethereum, you better keep the computation demand for running a server low to encourage decentralized, diversified server participants. So we call this scalable trust. So systems should scale to support more, stronger trust. So another factor that determines anonymity is how many users are providing covered traffic. So in any anonymous systems, you are only hiding in a crowd. So the bigger the crowd is, the better the anonymity is. So you want to have enough people to send covered traffic. So you want to make the covered traffic really, really cheap for the system to process. So DCNet has like a bandwidth problem but DCNet has another challenge that is it's very easy to disrupt a DCNet in the most plain construction, and that's where a lot of the complexity in prior works come from. Basically, any user you need to make sure that user send the message in the correct format, in the right position in the vector. ZipNet features a simple disruption resistance mechanism, sort of at the cost of introducing a TEE to handle this part. But the end result is a very simple design and with much more practical performance than the heavyweight cryptographic solutions. So these are the three key advantages. I'm just going to briefly go through why they hold, and to provide some high-level intuition. Before that, we need to briefly look at how DCNet works. ZipNet is based on the modern DCNet architecture, where you have a group of servers, let's say 3, and you trust at least one of them to be honest. Then you have users, user A here. So to send a message, user embed the message A in one of the slots in the broadcast vector. Okay, so the user needs to know which slot to use. This is determined through a scheduling process. Also, the system needs to prevent users from writing to other slots. So let's say the user A writes to that slot. This is user A's message. To encrypt the message, to get anonymity, this user derives pairwise keys with all of the servers, and basically do one-time pad encryption of the vector. So all the users does the same. The beauty of one-time pad encryption is that if you XOR these messages with the one-time pad that the server can compute, they cancel out. So the server can recover everyone's message in this vector. So that's how DCNet works at a very high level. The limitation, as you can see, is that the server needs to consume a lot of traffic. It scales with the number of users. So server needs to absorb a vector from every user, although the final output of the system is a single vector. This is where the high bandwidth cost comes. Also, the scheduling part used to be is typically the bottleneck, because it's, as I said, it's a complicated process if you don't have TE. So this is, we're going to solve that with TE. Right, so since 2010, when this modern DCNet architecture was proposed, a lot of research, there's a rich literature on anonymous communication and a lot of nice works. But if you look at the lines that extend DCNet, we are somehow limited to only having schemes focusing on client-side bandwidth reduction. But the server side also needs to be efficient to encourage decentralized trust. If you want volunteer servers, and even if the service is run by professionals, it would be nice to have a lower, cloud computing bill. Okay, so the way that we reduce bandwidth usage is to introduce a layer of aggregation before the traffic hits the server. So we have untrusted aggregators that takes client messages and they XOR them, just like what the server would have done, but just aggregator does the aggregation part. Aggregators, they are trusted to aggregate, but not for privacy, meaning they don't have so you still rely on the servers for the privacy. So aggregators are not trusted for the core mission of the system, which is to provide anonymity. So we envision that this can be run as a system, because a lot of the system, for example, Signal server or Tor directory infrastructure, they are trusted for availability, and they seems to provide availability, fine in practice. But we don't want to trust them for the crucial anonymity property. Right. So reducing bandwidth is the first thing that reduces the server cost. The second thing is to reduce the scheduling complexity. So typically scheduling is a MPC protocol involving all of the users and all of the servers. For example, you do a shuffle. That's the typical expensive where the complexity comes. We can avoid this by using a lightweight scheduling protocol because of the TE that we have at our disposal. Let me go there later. So basically, we can do scheduling with no explicit scheduling step. You do scheduling, you piggyback your scheduling message on top of the actual message that you send. This technique is called footprint scheduling. It's somewhat like a TDMA protocol where you just send a little tag in your otherwise useful message to reserve the slot for the next message you want to send. Okay, so we can make this process very cheap. So cover traffic is almost free. If you want to send a message just to provide anonymity, you don't want to send any useful bits, you just want to send 0, then the only cost you incur is this scheduling cost, which is very low. So this goes hand in hand with how we handle this disruption. Once scheduling is done, how do you make sure that users stick to the scheduling? How do you make sure they don't write to a wrong slot and they disrupt others' slot? So this part, as I said, has been where the complexity what makes a lot of the prior works expensive. So our idea is to invoke TE and have users to run their client in the TE. TE will ensure that the users stick to the scheduling and so on and so forth. The observation here is that this fashion of trust in TE is quite palatable because we don't really trust TE for privacy. We trust it for denial of service prevention. I think the nice thing is that if a TE is breached, you can detect denial of service attack. If the channel is clobbered, you can obtain cryptographic evidence of so, which signals a TE is broken. Then that's a very useful signal to know, and you can do you can maybe fall back to a more expensive protocol or go fix your TE. But having that signal is really useful. So that's the third advantage. We use TE to simplify disruption resistance, and all of this together it forms the it's why ZipNet we think is a much more practical construction of DCNet. How much time do I have? So I will just briefly flash you with how the protocol works. So we have, let's say, 4 clients. They send their messages not directly to the servers, but to an aggregator. You can have a tree structure for the aggregators, and aggregators, they finally aggregate all of the user message to a single aggregation, and that goes to the servers, and servers removes the one-time pad to decrypt the message. The cost is low because there's no fancy cryptography going on, only simple symmetric cryptography. So which is this whole thing is very fast. So to conclude, ZipNet is a protocol that we believe sits at a particular point on the Pareto frontier of the anonymous system. It has very low latency. The latency tends to increase as you add more servers to, it doesn't, unlike MixNet. And it has strong anonymity because it's DCNet based. And we emphasize on lowering server cost so that more servers can join and give you that diversified trust. But it doesn't reduce client bandwidth. This has been the focus of some prior works. We think, there's a setting in which client-side bandwidth is limiting, but there are also many settings where the server-side bandwidth is a limiting factor. There are techniques to compress on the client side, those are, as I said, has been the focus of prior works. I would leave the link to the paper on the screen if you're interested. It's online, and we also have a code base we built on top of SGX. So three key advantages and a simple design overall. So I really encourage you to check out if you want to know more about the details. It's not complicated at all.